Welcome. Thanks for joining. We've got loads of you in the chat already, which I love to see. If you're new, welcome to your first session. So my name is Toby. I'm the founder of Diverse. We are a careers community supporting over 5,000 underrepresented students and graduates in the UK and junior professionals as well. And we love to help you with free careers education, including meet the employer events just like this one. And today we'll be joined by Capital One. So we've got Samir and Rachinder, who we're going to introduce in just a moment, who are going to tell us all about life at Capital One and their advice as well on the applications. They've just launched their programs, so internships, placements, and graduate schemes across tech and strategy, which I'm sure you've all seen on the newsletter and the job board so far. So I hope you're really excited to find out more of those and get some advice on the application. As lots of you done already, please keep the chat going as well. It looks like it's working for everyone. Let us know in the chat who's here for the first time. So if this is your first session you've joined, let me know in the chat. I'd love to see that. And just a little bit of housekeeping. Most of you have found the chat already, so that's fantastic. It looks like Domingo's here for the first time. Josh is here for the first time. Shaquille, lots of first timers. That's brilliant. Great to have you on board. Welcome to the team. Just to the right of the chat, we've got the Q&A function as well. So what we want to do, guys, is make this really interactive, really relevant for you. So throughout the presentation that Capital One are going to run through, drop in your questions in the Q&A tab where you can see the question mark there. And you can actually vote for the questions that you want to be answered first as well. So unlike maybe some of your lectures that you've been on or some other careers webinars, this is going to be really engaging, really useful. So the one thing I asked you to do is really engage and get as much out of this as you can and apply the learnings as well when you go to apply for these roles, because we really believe that you can go out there and get these roles, but we do need you to engage first of all. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce the two guests. So Rachinder, would you like to say hello to the audience?
Yeah, definitely. So, hi, everyone. I'm Rachinder. I'm one of the recruiters at Capital One, and I predominantly look after the early careers tech roles. So that's anything that we recruit for in our early careers working in the tech department. So we have got graduate roles, internships, and placements. But I'll go into a lot more detail once we've got our slides prepared for you and go through sort of like the recruitment process so you do know what to expect if you are looking to apply to join us. And then we've also got Samir on the call with us as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samir. I'm one of the software engineering graduates currently working in the data department at Capital One.
Thanks so much for Samir. And it's really nice to have you on here, Samir, because, well, we did a podcast episode a while ago where we had a bit of a chat. But Samir came through our network previously and joined the Capital One scheme. So great to have him here as an individual to inspire you and show that you can do it as well. Before we get into the session, I just wanted to throw up a quick poll to see where you guys are at currently with your thoughts around applying for roles and if you've ever thought about a career with Capital One previously. So super easy one there. Yes, no. Have you ever thought about a career with Capital One before this session? Give me an idea of where you're at. Looks like we're pretty split, 50-50 or maybe 60-40. Yeah, so some of you have thought about Capital One before. That's brilliant. And you're going to learn a lot more today, which is going to be really useful. And then just a second one here for us to direct you during the session. Which aspect were you most interested in? Is it understanding what the schemes are like? Is it the application process? Is it the assessment center? Or is it really the Q&A that you're most here for? Give us an idea of what you want us to focus on the most. Brilliant, guys. Thanks so much for getting right on this. We've got a really engaged group, which I love to see. Awesome. So lots of advice on the applications. Well, brilliant. That's what we've got prepared for you. So looking forward to getting into that. Rachinder, would you like to share your screen and start clicking through?
Yeah, definitely. Fab. Can everybody see that okay? I'm sharing all good.
Yep. That's sharing perfectly. Yeah. Lots of yeses.
Amazing. I like it when tech works. Bro, so are we okay to kick off on our bits then?
Please do. And as I mentioned, guys, keep the questions coming throughout. So we're going to continue talking and going through the slides, but we would love to get to your questions at the end. So if something pops up, put that in the questions tab. And if you hear any gems as well, anything that you learn which you think is really, really useful, drop a little gem emoji in the chat and write that down as well to help everybody else. So yeah, without further ado, let's crack on.
Amazing. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. So great to see everybody in the chat box and how engaged everybody is. So we're from Capital One. We will give a bit of an intro into who we are if you've not actually heard of us before. This is what we'll be covering today. If I look at this way, I'm just looking at my second screen to see what we're going through. So yeah, so who is Capital One? So we'll let you know a little bit more about us and the sort of difference between the UK business and the US one, because we do have a much bigger business in the US, but the schemes will be for the UK business. Here from one of our grads, so we have introduced Samir on the call already, so he'll be going through his experience at Capital One and what it was like as going through the recruitment process and actually life at Capital One since he's joined us. We'll also then go through the roles we've actually got available. So as Toby said, they all went live on Monday. So after this call, you can go and apply to them straight away and then be prepared because you'll know what the recruitment process will be like. So we'll go through bit by bit as well, so you know what to expect from the whole process, with some really handy hints and tips there to make sure that you feel really confident and know what you need to do, what we're looking for. And then Samir will be going through a bit of a skills session. And this will go into a little bit more detail around one of the parts of the assessment day, which is the one that we do find that people find sort of the most nerve-wracking because it's something they may not have done before. So we can give you some hints and tips on that as well. And then we'll hand it over to you guys to do a bit of a question and answer session. So if you've got any burning questions or anything that you want to ask us at all, you can let us know then. So I know we've done a quick sort of intros already, but this is who we are again. So I'm Roshanda, so that Tech Early Careers Recruitment. And then we've got Samir with us, who works in our data team as a graduate software engineer. So who is Capital One? For those of you that have not heard about us before, so we are a credit card provider. That is our main product that we do offer. Like I mentioned before, we do have a much bigger US sort of parent company, and that was founded in 1996 by our founder, Rich Fairbank, who is still our US CEO. We do have a UK CEO, Lucy Hagues, who was actually a graduate herself. So she joined on our graduate scheme, I think around 25 years ago, and sort of progressed up all the different levels up to being the UK CEO, which really just show there's sort of no limit of where you can get to with us coming in from the early careers programs. So really exciting. And then in terms of our UK business, we have been operating for over 20 years with offices both in Nottingham and London. And we'll go through which schemes will be available in which locations as well. We are a mission-led business, and what that really means is that everything we do for our customers. So any decisions we make, we're always thinking about what's right for the customers. Even if you're in like one of the tech teams writing some software, you might think, oh, how does this apply to the customer? But even then, we're thinking about how can we make programs work really quickly for customers? How can we make sure that everything that they're using on our website is as easy as possible to use as well. So it really sort of steams through to all different departments. And then a little bit more around sort of our classic card. So we are the only credit card with a 4-star Fair Banking Award as well, which really sort of shows all the work that we do with our customers there. And a few other things as well. We're not just around our customers and credit cards. We do a lot of work around corporate social responsibility and working with our local communities. So we do a lot with that in terms of like financial and digital literacy to make sure that people are making good decisions with their finances and they understand the finances as well. We do employability schemes. So we do go to sort of different schools, let them know what different career options there are, sort of try and widen their knowledge around that a little bit as well. And then fundraising and volunteering initiatives, which is something that you can get involved in. So quite often we do go out to different schools as well to do national numeracy to support them in their sort of number skills. So loads of different things that we do. So that's a bit of a snapshot in terms of Capital One. And then this just sort of highlights the sort of the bigger company itself. So you can see where we've got the UK card one along the bottom. So this is where all of our roles will be focused, is on the UK business. But as you can see, we do have business in Canada as well, and then the US, which is the much bigger one that has around 50,000 employees. In the UK, we're looking around 1,600. So still quite a nice size that you'll get loads of experience. But yeah, a little bit smaller. So it's worth bearing in mind if you are doing research into Capital One, ahead of any interviews to sort of make that distinction between the UK side and the US side as well, because a lot of the stuff on the internet is US focused, with it being quite a bit bigger. And then just sort of highlighting the products that we have. So we've got mainly two types of customers. Ones who are new to credit, so it could be like yourselves. If you're at university and never had a credit card before, you might not have much credit history or sort of a credit score. So yeah, that you could be the type of customer for that one. And then we do also have ones who are customers who maybe have struggled with credit in the past. So we can support them in getting their credit score back up to a good level and sort of giving them that education so they can feel a little bit more confident around credit and making financial decisions there as well. And then we do have sort of other cards which are more sort of spending related. So we work with different retail companies. So you can see like Littlewoods that we've got, also the post office. If people want to go into like a store to manage their finances, they can go into a post office and so yeah, get support through there. And then we do also have a brand new one that's coming out, which is with ASOS. So I know I was very excited about that one because I shop on ASOS all of the time. So it will be one that you can sort of use your ASOS Capital One credit card on ASOS, but also just as a general credit card as well. It won't just be predominantly for ASOS, but there will be loads of sort of different things that you can do with that, which will be announced very soon. And then a bit of an insight into diversity at Capital One. So this is something that's really important to Capital One. We've got something called BRGs, which is business resource groups. And what these are employee networks. So if there's something that's really important to a group of employees, they've created this group and it's there to support all other employees who maybe identify in that group or are an ally of that group. They hold different webinars to sort of upskill and give people information on topics that are relevant to that BRG. They also hold different events. So I know we've just had Nottingham Pride, which we sponsored. So loads of people from Capital One went to Pride with loads of Capital One rainbow flags, T-shirts, to really show support there. So this is something that you can get involved in from day one if there's anything here that sort of resonates with you. So just to call out a few, so we have got REACH, which is our Race, Equality and Cultural Heritage BRG. Women in Tech as well, so we're a really strong supporter of getting women into tech, because I know it is one that there have been sort of more barriers to entry in the past. Out front is our LGBTQ plus community, and then Mind Your Mind is our mental health one as well. But as you can see, there is quite a variety. If you did come in and you think, oh, there's a group that I'd really like to start, we're all ears as well. So we're really flexible and encourage you to sort of think around things that you'd like to support with as well. And then I will hand it over to Samir so you can hear a little bit more around his experience.
Hey everyone, I'm Samir, and I'm currently a graduate software engineer currently in data. So I'm going to speak just a few minutes about my journey, how I joined Cap One, what I think about Cap One, and what I currently do. So a little bit about my journey itself. I was originally an international student, where I then went to the University of Nottingham to study computer science. So I did a bachelor's of computer science, where I also did a placement year. So I did my placement year in Sony, where I worked for a software engineer for a year. And that was mostly working on TVs, actually. And during that sort of time is where I sort of found out about Cap One. So where I first found out about it was one of the talks from the current grads at the time that had come to do something like this for University of Nottingham. So as University of Nottingham is based in Cap One's based in Notts, we do know a lot about Capital One itself, especially the students at the time. And it was all really nice to just hear of what Capital One was doing at the time and how sort of the graduates fared. And I think that was where my interest sort of peaked at first. And then the second time I sort of heard about them was when we did Hack Knots in University of Nottingham, where Capital One was also involved, and they had brought over their Dev API project, which allowed you to basically use their APIs to create to basically use in your hackathon and create a software product. So these two sort of events got me really interested in Cap One. And I really liked the idea of the company. I liked what they were doing. I liked the people that I had met at the time, which were mostly the current grads, so where I'd be if I had joined. And I thought this would be a great place to work. So what I did was go through the application process. So I applied as a graduate, so I had not done an intern or placement year at Cap One before. And it was the process that you will have done, will do if you apply to Cap One now, which is going through the various coding assessments and the interviews. And I thought they were really comfortable and kind of really, really smooth. So I'd done, as any grad would do when applying for roles outside of uni, you do go through a lot of them, and some of them are not as good as others. But the Cap One was really smooth. The people who I spoke to were really nice and just made me feel welcome. The coding assessment was challenging, but it was good because that allowed me to communicate my thoughts. It allowed me to explain what I was thinking, which I think is really important whilst you code. And eventually we got to the final interview, which is where you speak to one of the tech leaders. And that interview is more about what inspires you and what kind of things do you get involved with in tech, and why do you find it so interesting? And that's where I was really able to express myself, and I could see the interviewer really interested in me as a person rather than just purely my skills, which I honestly really, really liked. And I had an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. And that sort of just became a really chill conversation, which I honestly enjoyed. And after getting an offer at Cap One, I then joined the following September. So when joining Cap One, you first get put into a rotation-based system. So you have the opportunity to try out 3 different teams before you get into your final home. So you work in your first team for a year, your second team for 9 months, and your final team for 6 months. And the reason we do this is so that you don't necessarily have to decide what you want to do off the bat. A lot of people have a lot of interest in various departments of tech. So it's really good that everyone gets as much experience as they can in each of these parts. So I'm here for about a year now, and I'm about to rotate into my second team where I'll be doing something completely different. So I've become quite comfortable with my first team, but now it's going to be that new sort of sphere and like learning new things, and everything's going to be different. It's going to be great. And that's how you keep advancing your skills and progressing your career. So what do I actually do at the moment? So I'm currently working in the data department. So I work in a team called Team Rocket, and our responsibility is all around data governance. So as a financial business, data is extremely important to us. We have a lot of financial data. We have a lot of sensitive data. And we need to know where this data is at all times. We need to protect it. So our team is responsible for monitoring the flow of data, making sure all the data is safeguarded, governing the data, and making sure we know who's using it, and generally looking after the quality and health of that data. And honestly, I've learned a lot. We're a full stack team, so I get to work in a variety of languages. And it's been a really thrilling experience over the past year just to sort of get involved in this sort of data atmosphere where you wouldn't really get to do these kind of things in uni. And throughout this year, there are so many people to help you on this journey, especially the sort of the trio, you could say, which is your buddy, manager, and mentor. So when you join as a grad, you get assigned all 3 of these, and your buddy will usually be someone outside of your team who will be looking at sort of just general social, non-work related, just having a good time, making sure you're fitting in well at Cap One. So this is someone you can be informal with. This is someone you can just have a good time with and just take a break with. It doesn't have to be work related whatsoever. It can just be having fun. Your mentor is someone who is in your team who will likely be the person you spend the most time with. And they'll be the one guiding you throughout the whole process. And this process is sort of like learning what the team does, learning all your Cap One specific things. And your mentor will definitely will be there like the whole way. You will always be having a mentor, so they'll always be able to support you. They will make time for you to make sure you're always up to date. And of course, your manager. So your manager's main goal is to make sure you succeed. So that's about goal setting, objective setting, making sure you achieve what you want to do in your internship and or graduate program, and basically trying to figure out how do we get you from here to there. And this sort of trio is really, really important, and it supports you throughout the way. Now, I've spoken a little bit about all the kind of work we do, but it's not just work. There is quite a bit of social aspects and a social fun life at Cap One. So there is a whole working group dedicated for early careers to making sure that all the grads are having a good time, to making sure they're happy. And part of that is also something called GradCom, which I'm a part of. And GradCom's responsibility is just making sure that there's fun social stuff for grads to do. And that's basically just making sure we're happy, fun, engaged, and we're responsible for things like corporate social responsibility. We do a lot of board game nights, and just socials in general, just to make sure we're all communicating, collaborating, more than just outside of the work environment. On top of that, there are also many projects we can get involved with outside of your team. And one of these is a thing called Dev API. So if you do go to a hackathon that Capital One is part of, you will have the opportunity to use one of the Capital One APIs. And these APIs are actually owned, designed, and created by grads. So it's one of the projects we have in Cap One where graduates take full ownership of the project from the top to the end. And this gives you a lot of leadership and ownership and actually bringing that product to real customers outside. And that gives you a lot of skills as well. So at Capital One, it's very much you basically get given a lot of responsibility. And I think that responsibility lets you grow as much as possible. And that's about it. That's a quick overview about me and Cap One.
Thanks so much, Samir. So if you liked what Samir was talking about and want to sort of a bit of it yourself, this is the programs that we've got available to apply to. So as mentioned before, we do have graduate, internship and placement programs within our tech teams. I put down a little bit more information here around what they are. So the graduate one is 2 years worth of rotations. Typically, it's 3 different rotations across 3 different teams. And then at the end of the 2 years, it is a permanent role. So I know some graduate schemes are just contracted to the 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, you may need to look at a different position. But yeah, with us, we want to invest in you so that you stay with us as well. So we do look at what happens after that 2 years. So we do have like career conversations with you about what happens next as well. For our graduate role, we are only recruiting for it in the Nottingham office. The Nottingham office is our head office. So for our tech teams, we have a lot more of them based in Nottingham. And then for salary, we are offering 40,000 plus a 5k sign-on bonus. And then for this one, this is the 2024 graduate scheme. So you would have needed to be graduating within the last year. So that's graduation years of 2023 and 2024. Our internship is a summer internship. So this runs from the end of June until the end of August for 10 weeks. And we have got this available in London and in Nottingham. And I have got the salaries down there as well. So London is 25, Nottingham 22, with a £1,000 sign-on bonus. And to be eligible for the internship, you'd need to be in your penultimate year, which means that you would have 1 year left at uni after the internship, so graduating in 2025. And then if you're on a course that has a sandwich year, we do also offer placement years. This is just in our Nottingham office, and this would be for 12 months. You can either do one placement of 12 months or split it into 2, so you can go into 2 different teams for 6 months each. Depending on how well you're progressing in your team, you can make that decision once you're with us already, just to see how you're getting on. And then for this one, we're paying 22,000 plus a 3k sign-on bonus. And the sort of graduation year that you would need to be in would be 2026 to be eligible for this one. And we do offer sort of visa sponsorship, particularly for the graduate role. We would just ask that you are already have right to work in the UK, which can include a student visa. So if you're an international student, that's okay, and we can work with you to sort of see which sponsorship option would be the best one. If you're currently living outside of the UK, I'm not sure if anybody's in that boat, and don't already have the right to work in the UK, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to sponsor you. But yeah, happy to pick up on that if anybody has any questions in the Q&A on any eligibility or the sort of details of the roles. And then I'll hand over to Samir to give you a little bit more insight into what you can be doing once you're with us.
Thank you, Richie. So within tech, we have 3 core roles that you can be a part of. This is software engineering, quality engineering, and infrastructure engineering. So software engineering is more about feature development and actively coding new things for the platform and the various backend and front-end services at Capital One, where quality engineering is making sure this is well tested, well monitored, and the overall general architecture monitoring, and making sure our applications are working as efficiently as possible. So we have a variety of testing, and I personally learned a lot about it when I joined Cap One. So there is a lot you will get out of it. There's also infrastructure engineering. So we at Cap One invest heavily into the cloud, AWS cloud specifically, and infrastructure engineering will look more around infrastructure as code and actually how you create things in the cloud, make them well maintained, build microservices, and make sure that you can extend them as easily as possible. So some of the departments that you can work in are like web. So these are things like the Capital One website, and you will be working in React, JavaScript, or Node.js. And data, so this is where I work in, and that's more around Java, Python, AWS tooling, so things like Lambdas, Fargates, and DynamoDB tables. So the actual services, this is more about Java and using the cloud to take advantage of it. And of course, our mobile app, which is both in iOS and Android with Kotlin and Swift respectively. And of course, the cloud itself, which is using AWS tooling to make that happen.
Oh, thanks, Samir. So I know Samir touched on quite a lot of this during his sort of experience at Capital One. These are sort of other things that you can benefit from alongside the technical skills that you'll gain from being within the tech teams. So there's loads of development opportunities, not just the technical side. So we do have trainings and sort of workshops on soft skills, which could be things like stakeholder management, presentation skills. And then we do have those career conversations with you as well. So we can figure out where you'd like your career to go and how Capital One can support that as well. And then I know Samir touched loads around the social experiences. So we really want to make sure that your sort of time at Capital One is as fun as possible. So there's loads of different things that you can get involved in. And we do make sure that these are inclusive. So it's not just always going to the pub after work. You can go for a board game night. We do like donut making, anything like that. So yeah, quite a variety of different things depending on what your interests are. And then across all of our schemes, you will work on real business projects. We don't look at sort of like the interns coming in and get them to work on dummy projects. Things that they are doing will actually make a difference. So you could find that some software that you've created or worked on actually then goes down and supports the customer at the end of the day. So you can feel as if you're actually making a really big impact at Capital One. And then there is loads of support from the get-go. So even before you join us, I'll be on hand to support with the whole recruitment process. You'll get in contact with our grad or intern working groups, who'll make sure that transition of joining us is really smooth. And then you'll also have your manager, mentor, and buddy. So there will always be somebody there to help you if you've got any question. And at Capital One, we think no question is a stupid question. So anything you want to know, just ask. These are some highlights of some of the fun things we do. So the top left is one of our corporate social responsibility events. So these are where some of the interns went to one of our local nature reserve and helped sort of build some paths and make sure that everything was really maintained. Bottom right, we've got the donut decorating there, and that's at our London office as well. And then the bottom left was one of our games nights. I think that was in one of the games bars in London. But yeah, quite a variety of different events that you can get involved in. And then the recruitment process. So if you like what you've heard so far and you're thinking of putting an application in, this will be able to give you some sort of insight into what to expect and some top tips as well. So what are we looking for from software engineers or software developers on the tech scheme? So first of all, you will need to have baseline coding skills. It can be in any language. We know that there is a lot of different tech and sort of platforms that we use at Capital One, and we can support you with learning those once you're in team. So yeah, as long as you've got a baseline level there. Problem solving. So we know with code, sometimes there are errors in there. So it's sort of being able to find an error and then create a solution for that, really. Fast learning, this is to do with sort of your ability to pick up new skills once you're in, but also sort of keeping up to date with tech. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about ChatGPT, AI, so tech, the world of tech is moving so quickly. And as a company, we want to keep up with that as well. So yeah, it's making sure that you can sort of really be on top of that as much as possible. And then communication and stakeholder management. So even if you're set in your team, you will be able to work with loads of other teams. You'll be able to work with more senior engineers to be able to build relationships, but also use those relationships as well is really important. So these are the skills that we'll be looking at throughout the recruitment process, which is this. So this is a quick overview of what the process will look like. I will go into each section in a little bit more detail as well. But the main thing to sort of know from this slide is the whole process is virtual. So we do a lot of our interviews on Zoom to make sure it's really flexible so you can do them in an environment that you're comfortable with and that we can work around your uni timetable if you've got any exams. So they're really easy to sort of schedule in with you all. So the first thing would be is to put an application in. So we don't look at your grades. We also don't look at your subjects that you're doing. As long as you've got an interest in tech, that's all that we really want to see at this stage. There will be a couple of questions just to make sure you do meet the eligibility. So in terms of your graduation year, the sponsorship, but we're not going to be asking you to write any essays or long application questions at this stage. It's simply really simple questions. We also don't look at your CV. We do ask for it on the application just so we've got a record of it, but we don't use it as a screening tool. We want to see what you can show us in the recruitment process. So yeah, don't worry about spending ages formatting your CV or anything like that at all. And then, as I said, so we look at your potential during the recruitment process, and these are all actual skills that you would need to be successful in the role. We don't ask any questions that will try and trip you up or anything that doesn't actually relate to what you would be doing. So once you've put in the application and you're all okay with the eligibility, you'll get sent across 2 different assessments. So the first is a coding assessment, which is on the screen. So we do use Code Signal for the coding assessment. And this is just to check that you do have that baseline coding skills that we're looking for. In terms of the assessment itself, it will go from sort of 4 levels of difficulty, and then they'll create a score based on your performance, which is across both your implementation and also your problem solving ability with the assessment. On Code Signal, there are lots of practice tests, so I would definitely recommend familiarising yourself with the platform so you know how to use it and you know what to expect from the assessment. And then sort of like general housekeeping, make sure that you're in a really quiet space, free from distractions. Once you've started the Code Signal assessment, you can't pause it and go back into it. You need to complete it all in that time. And I believe you have 70 minutes to complete it. So make sure you do give yourself plenty of time to complete it. Read each scenario really carefully. Try not to sort of second guess what it's asking you. Take the time to read it so you know exactly what is expected of you. And make sure you do understand it. So if you wanted to reread it again, I think that would be really useful. And then there is quite a lot of support within the assessment. So you'll have like your task description, there'll be a few rules there, and then there will be a README which has some more hints and tips there. And then within the assessment itself, there is an IDE which you will use to write your code in. Don't do it externally because that could be seen as like suspicious activity. So do everything that you're doing within the Code Signal platform itself. And then the second assessment you'll get is our situational strengths assessment. So this is through a company called Capfinity. And what we're looking for here is your sort of skills and work preferences that would relate to the role. So you'll have a screen which looks quite similar to the one on the bottom, where it will give you a like work-based scenario, so like a typical job example that you could find yourself in. And then you would rank your preference. So how would you react to that situation? With this one, you don't have a time limit, but again, you will need to complete it all in one go, which is just to make sure you've not gone away to try and Google the answers. And then top tips for this one. So you don't need to have any specific training or skills for this one. It is just on how your preference would be to those workplace scenarios. If you wanted to have a look on Capfinity, they do have some similar questions that you can do some practice runs of, just so you can have a sort of, have a go with that beforehand to know what to expect. And then you should draw from your own sort of life experiences or preferences. So if there's an example and you've been in a similar situation, you can try and think about how you reacted in that situation, which will help you sort of decide where to rank the given responses. And then if you wanted to, you could do a bit of a research into Capital One to try and understand how we like to work. While I wouldn't say to try to sort of put your answers in terms of what you think we're looking for, it could just give you a bit of an idea of how we do work and if that matches with what you would do in that scenario. And then again, read all the scenarios really carefully, make sure you are fully understanding the example, but also all the different these sort of options at the bottom there as well. Be in a quiet place, free from distractions. I think this will run through the whole of the recruitment process, so you can be sort of in an environment that you can really focus on what the assessment or the interview is that you're doing. And then be yourself. So do put your answers with what your sort of natural reaction is there. We really want to sort of encourage people to sort of show their best self during the recruitment process. So yeah, that's a really key one. And then if you've passed the assessment, you'll be invited to do one of our one-way video interviews. This is one of the ones where you'll get some set questions and then you record yourself on the platform answering them. I know they can be really awkward. I did them myself when I was going through graduate applications and did dread them a little bit. So I do appreciate they're probably not like the easiest ones because you can't interact with somebody. But they're a really good way for us to find out a little bit more around you. So with these ones, there will be motivation questions. You do get preparation time for each question, but then you've only got one chance to record your answer. And then with this, we're assessing your communication skills and the content of your answers. We're not looking at who's given the most confident answer, who's sort of the loudest. So yeah, we're really not looking at those sort of behavioural or personality traits. It's more around what you're actually talking about. So why do we use them, even though they are a little bit awkward? So they're really convenient. So I know you guys are super busy with unis, exams, lessons. So you can do them at any time and at any place. I think we normally give you around a week to complete them. So yeah, if you find that you're best suited to do it at like 10 p.m. when all your housemates are asleep, that's totally fine. You can really do them whenever you want to. Super accessible as well. So you don't have to have any scheduling required. We do have quite a lot of candidates that come to video interviews, which would make it quite difficult for our recruitment team to be able to get all those schedules together. So yeah, it's sort of really accessible for you guys, but also accessible on our end as well. They are fair and consistent, so all candidates get the same questions, they get the same amount of prep time, so we can be really consistent with how we're assessing them. And then that goes through as well with being objective, so we can review all the responses and make sure that we're really being fair, assessing against the criteria that we have. And then what we aren't assessing, so while we will be looking at your motivations of wanting to join Capital One, we don't need you to know our whole financial history or in-depth business information. It's more what about Capital One resonates with you, and why do you want to work for us, not just who are we. How confident you sound in your answers. Yeah, don't worry about being like the loudest person. It's just more what you're actually talking about. We know that quite a few of you may never have had any sort of like work experience or been within like a professional business environment before. So we're not looking at your experience as such in terms of like professional or work experience. We don't mind what you dressed in either. If you wanted to do it in a dressing gown, that's fine. If you wanted to come videoed in a whole suit, also fine. And again, in terms of like your location, you can do it wherever you want to. So don't worry too much about what your background looks like. And then we also won't be looking at your academic record. So we won't be asking any questions around like grades or anything like that. And then top tips here. So yeah, again, make sure you're in a quiet environment, that maybe your housemates know that you're doing a video interview. They're not going to come knock on your door or barging in. Do your research into Capital One, but really find what resonates with you and why you're interested in Capital One. If that's to do with the tech department itself, our sort of diversity and inclusion agenda, or something else that you found out about Capital One that you really like, try and relate it back to what's important to you. And then, so the questions are assessing motivations and then also skills. So there will be a couple of competency-based questions, which doesn't matter if you've not had similar sort of work experience. You can draw on examples from university work, so like team projects, any hobbies or sort of volunteering that you've done. They are designed to be quite open, so you can draw from a few different examples depending on what experience or sort of extracurricular things that you have done. And then none of the questions are trying to trip you up or catch you out at all. They're really designed to support you in showing off what you can do. And yeah, in terms of that preparation time, you have 3 minutes to prepare and 3 minutes to record. But don't feel like you need to take the whole 3 minutes to record. If you feel like you've got across your point within a minute and a half or 2 minutes, don't just sort of keep waffling just to fill the 3 minutes. You can be a bit more succinct with what you're talking about. And then I would say to practice the STAR technique, especially for those questions that are a little bit more competency based. If you've not heard of the STAR technique before, it's just a way of framing your answers, which would be in situation, task, action, result. But there is loads of information on the internet about the STAR technique if you wanted to have a look through some examples to help with your preparation. And then next up, so if you pass the video interview stage, we'll invite you to one of our assessment centres. So again, these are virtual, but you will be sort of interacting with members of our tech team. So there's 3 different parts. The first one will be a strengths interview. This isn't competency based. It was just a couple from the previous video interview that were. This is looking around your strengths, workplace preferences, and how you like to work. So similar to the situational strengths assessment that you would have done from the get-go, they'll give you a few scenario-based questions that sort of follow a project within software development, and then you would give your answer in terms of how you would deal with that scenario, what your preference would be. And then we'll also ask you to prepare a 5-minute presentation, which can be an opportunity to showcase any sort of technical related project that you've worked on. And there will be a few sort of technical questions based off the back of that as well. And then the other part is a pair programming exercise. So you'll be teamed up with one of our software engineers to go through a coding challenge. But the skills session that Samir's running at the end of this will go into that a little bit more detail, because I know that's something that is quite new to a lot of people. So just to sort of like clarify what the difference is between strengths and competency-based questions. So strengths questions, these are assessing what you can do, not just what you have already done, whereas competency questions do look a little bit more into the past of what you have done before. And then strengths as well, assess your natural peaks and troughs through energy. So we are looking at your engagement as well. So if there's a question that you've really engaged with, we see that you're really excited by that, we do look at that as well. Whereas competency, we don't look at if you're engaged as much with a question or not engaged with a certain question. It's more just your actual answer of it. And then the strengths ones are all sort of hypothetical scenarios, which do mean that they are a little bit harder to rehearse answers for. You can try and think of some of the scenarios, But yeah, it's a little bit difficult to do like the STAR technique as such in your preparation for them. Whereas the competency ones, you can prepare a little bit more with the STAR technique. So we will sort of assess you in slightly different ways across the recruitment process. And then top tips for the strengths interview. So I would definitely research the company and its values for this one, and have a look at the skills that we're looking for. And then have a think around yourself as well. So what do you enjoy doing? What do you do when you are the most engaged? What does it look like when you're performing at your best? Anything like that, because those are the type of things that will help you support with the answers. And then as well, understand what you want out of a career. So what is it that you're actually looking to get out of the internship? A little bit longer plan if you've got any sort of other career goals. If you don't, that's totally fine as well. It's just sort of knowing that you have got that self-awareness as well. And then some of the questions are designed to be a little bit more of a closed question. So try and expand on your answers as much as possible. We won't be giving prompts or sort of hints with these ones to make sure it's consistent across all candidates. So yeah, try and sort of expand on your answers as much as possible. And then in any of the questions, if you feel like you want to give an example, please do so. But because it's not competency based, we're not necessarily looking for examples. It's just if it can help you with your answer. And then again, be yourself. So you definitely come across best when you talk about what you enjoy and what you're energized by, which is why we use a strength interview for this one. So yeah, try not to just please the interviewer or say what you think we're looking for. And then finally, once you've finished or passed the assessment day, you'll be able to meet with one of our senior tech leaders, and this will be for the final interview. This one's really informal. It's a really nice interview where you can just chat through your career aspirations, what your different interests in tech are, and suitability to the programs. This is sort of like a final check just to make sure you are suitable, but this is also for you to make sure that we're suitable for you as well. At the end of the final interview, if all is okay, the goal would be to be able to offer you a role onto the program you've applied for. And we want you to know if it's right for you, so you can be able to either accept or decline. And then with offers, we do usually make them within a week of the final interview. They are unconditional, so you don't need to achieve a certain grade. So if you're aiming for that first, but you get third, we literally don't mind. So yeah, it does take the pressure off a little bit, which is nice. And then you will have some time to decide if you want to accept. We're not going to sort of rush you into any decisions if it's not quite right yet for you. So yeah, know loads of people want to have a chat to their friends or their family, just to get some advice on that. And then sometimes it can be quite a while from your offer until you join us, especially with like our graduate role starting in September. So there's lots of different activity that happen between that time. So you'll be able to keep in touch with us and meet some more of the team at different events and activities that we've got. And then finally, just a sort of couple of top tips across the whole of the process. So really make sure that you do your research into Capital One, research into yourself as well. It might sound strange, but what activities do you enjoy? Where do you feel like your strengths are? What are your values as well? Do they align with Capital One's values and what we're doing as a company? And then be really clear on the skills that we're looking for to support you to succeed across the application process. And then definitely practice. So practice those online assessments across coding and the situational strengths ones. Even sort of practice doing like mock interviews with your friends if you wanted to do it on Zoom, to sort of help you get comfortable with that platform. I know quite a lot of different companies will be using virtual interviews and the recorded self-interviews as well. So just sort of help you get comfortable speaking in front of a laptop, because I know it's not always natural. And then you will have a recruiter on hand for the tech ones. It will be me. And I am able to give loads of preparation material. I do coaching calls with everybody in the process to make sure that you're feeling really confident and you know what to expect as well. So yeah, I'll definitely be on hand the whole time. And then finally, also ask for feedback. So once you've got through to sort of one of the more face-to-face stages, so the assessment day and the final interview, we can give personalised feedback. Regardless if you're successful or not, I think it's a really good chance for you to sort of see where else you can better yourself there. And then for the assessment day with the pair programming bit, I will hand over to Samir, who'll go through it in a little bit more detail for the skills session.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit about pair programming. So what is pair programming? It is a really collaborative process. It is something you will see everywhere in Cap 1, and every team is going to do it. Normally, one person will be driving, so they'll be the one who will be actively coding, while the other person will be navigating and intervening and making sure that everything is proceeding smoothly. And it's all about working together to make sure that you can get to the best solution in the end of it. And for that to happen, you need a constant line of communication. You want to be able to share knowledge, context, solutions at all times. You want to be talking as much as you can, because that's what's collaborative about it. And it's what makes pair programming successful. So what it isn't is it's just one person coding and while the other person watches. It's not that. If that happens, you're not collaborating, and it will be more of sort of you won't really get the most out of it at all. And that will eventually lead to waste time, and that's not what you want. Pair programming is all about trying to be more efficient together. It's also not two keyboards on one screen. You're not both programming together actively on one screen, one display, or even one Zoom call. That is not the point. It is all about having you both sort of share your thoughts and make sure that you both are accepting and working to go towards one accepted goal. And for that to happen, you both can't sit in silence either. It can't just be one person coding along while the other person watches. And well, you're not going to be able to write first code perfectly in the first try. It's a very iterative process. Pair programming is all about building code to be better and better over time. So why do we do pair programming? And a big part of that is so that you can understand the problem better, and not just for yourself, but for the people around you. And the more the people understand the problem, the more knowledge you can share across. So by sharing this knowledge, you are slowly expanding the pool that you can pull from across your team, which allows you to create cleaner, better code the first time around. And that makes it easier to build off of. A second pair of eyes when you pair programming always helps you find those simple errors that you can spot quickly and allows you to quickly iterate over. I often have simple errors, and it's great to just have someone point them out to me so that we don't just run into them soon after. Pair programming in the real world happens every single day here at Cap One. It allows us to perform better. We get better teamwork. You get better engineers. The code that you generate is of a higher standard and better quality, which is what you want when you work here, especially with the systems we deal with, and allows you to create strong relationships with team members and allows you to get them to know them better with how they think and how they work. And not just the people that you work with actively. It's about collaborating with engineers outside of your team as well, because that gives you an opportunity to learn more about them too. So what do you do or not do in pair programming? So what you do is you ask questions and check your understanding. And you check that the interviewer understands what you're doing. Always be speaking, always be sharing what you're doing, is because if you're silent, you won't be able to collaborate as well. You want to explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. So make sure that the interviewer understands what's happening. And you can Google things, just don't Google the answer. That would be cheating. Remember, what you write is just as important as how you write it, and practice. So try calling in a friend, a classmate, and have them look over it. Have them work with your programming. This allows you to build your communication skills to make it a bit better. Don't ignore the README and the guidance provided. That's there to help you. Don't forget to collaborate. That is one of the main goals with pair programming. And don't refuse to take advice. The advice we give is to help point you toward the right direction. Don't worry about writing the most efficient code in your first try. It is an iterative process. And don't stay silent when you're deep in thought. Always be talking about what you're thinking about, what kind of thought process you have. That helps understand how you think and how it would work in Cap 1 too. Don't fixate on something you're struggling to do. Try to leave it and maybe come back to it at a later point of time. And also don't expect the interview to take over. It is very much you actively doing the driving. And here's a quick video on pairing remotely and working in Zoom. So when you do the paired interview, you will be you'll be on a Zoom call where you'll be able to take control of the screen. Up from the other side. There you go. So what kind of skills are we looking for? We're looking for fast learning, problem solving, communication and stakeholder management, and baseline coding skills. And some top tips for pair programming. So the video call software is not going to be perfect, and that's all right. It's fine if there's issues with it. You can always resolve it with your interviewer. Prepare your space. Can you work there for an hour? Is it comfortable? Avoid distractions. Close any notifications or pages on your computer that may pop up. Other knows know you have an interview. You can't point at your screen, so your cursor is your best friend. No one will be able to see you. If you think you've done something wrong or would like to try something different, that's okay. Just talk it through. Be sure to talk about anything you're doing, because sometimes it won't be visible on the screen. So whatever you write or jot down won't be seen. So the best way to communicate is to actively speak about it. Try to work through anything you are stuck on. You can ask for prompts, but they will affect your overall score. And just be yourself.
Fab. So that's the whole recruitment process and some sort of top tips on the different stages as well. I will stop sharing again, and then we can go into a bit of a Q&A. I can see we have had loads of questions through, so I'll hand it back over to Toby.
Yeah, loads of great questions, and thanks so much for that. Honestly, well, thanks on two parts. Firstly, for giving up your time to do that, but also for preparing such a brilliant and useful and practical session, because I think you've given us all the tools there to go and do our best in the application process, and it is really an inclusive application process as well. So thanks for that as well. And as you've seen, guys, some brilliant projects projects and work that you can get involved in at Capital One across all of those schemes. Amazing salaries as well. You've got London, you've got Nottingham, and you've got a really supportive and social environment to grow. So I really do think this is, one of the top places you could possibly start your early career journey. And we really believe that you can go out there and do it as well. Before we dive into some of these questions, Samir, just wanted to ask you about that as well and your experience in Nottingham, because we've got some people who are going to be looking at those two locations. And I think we often say it's really good to be open-minded about where you start your career and trying out different cities as well. So how have you found that being in Nottingham?
So since I'm not originally from the UK, so Nottingham was my first home basically, and it continues to be my home. So I quite like Nottingham, and the Cap One Nottingham office is great. It offers a lot. Like you've got the gym, you've got like a lot of amenities here. You've got a cafeteria as well, so there's plenty here. And because of that, it's like nice and open and spacey, and the office is super nice. So it's great. The Nottingham office is the headquarters, so it's really good to just have that sort of extra eyes around you as we have more space here.
Brilliant. So yeah, there you have it. If you're not from Nottingham, many of you probably aren't from Nottingham, definitely be open-minded, because it's really good to try different cities and different opportunities at the beginning of your career. So let's dive into some of these brilliant questions. Thanks so much, guys, for sharing these. And some of these we might have covered already, so we'll see if we can get them off in a couple of answers as we go through. The first one from Amarasi: how did you prepare for the coding interview? So Samir, what was your preparation like for that coding stage?
So I think it's really interesting. Initially, when I was prepping for the Cap One interview, Toby reached out to me as well, and we had a session together, and that was really helpful, as that allowed me to go through some of the questions and try to clarify some of those answers. And on top of that, I took advantage of a lot of sites, especially like HackerRank. I thought that was quite helpful. That gives you some of that base knowledge with the language you most prefer, since you're able to choose the language you want to do the coding interview in. So I'd pick a language you're most comfortable with and try as many problems as you can. And I think the interview is not just about coding, it's also about how you express yourself whilst you code. So all about that pair programming skills, all about how you think about testing. So how do you think about the before part of the coding and the after? So what about testing it, making sure it works well? And actively sharing and contributing your ideas. I think it's sort of progressing outside of just that kind of scope, so making sure those skills are up as well.
Brilliant. And could you mention the platform again? That was HackerRank?
Correct.
Yeah, Aisha, if you could just grab that URL, that would be great, and plug that into the chat. Thank you for that. Yusuf asked, there's been a couple of questions around the experience hires as well. So obviously, this session, guys, is all about early careers, so internships, graduates, and placements. Richinda, if anyone's interested in further Capital One roles, experience hires, what would you recommend for those candidates?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we don't just recruit for early careers. We've got loads of roles that are across like the whole Capital One business, which will include sort of tech roles as well. The best thing to do would just be to have a look on our jobs website, the careers website for Capital One. With the experience hire, it does work a little bit differently to the early careers one. So it's not sort of like all the jobs go live on the same day. It is just sort of at the time that team needs that position to be recruited for. I know on the careers website, you can set up notifications. So if there's any sort of type of jobs that you're interested in, you get notifications of when they're advertised or sort of when they start recruiting. You haven't got to always keep checking on it as well. The recruitment process would be slightly different as well. It doesn't follow the same format as what we've gone through today, but you will have a recruiter who will support you in that process. They'll be able to advise on what that process will look like.
Brilliant. And as we've mentioned as well, applying early can be really useful as well. So definitely get onto those notifications so you can see those roles right away. And just a reminder, if anyone's joined a little bit later, we've got the roles pinned to the top of the chat. So after this session, if you want to go ahead and start your applications, then you can do that and make sure you take on all the tips that we've shared so far. Another question, and thanks again, guys, really good question. So a question from Iman here for you, Samir. What was the most difficult stage during the application process for you?
Oh, I think it was the paired coding interview. That was definitely the most difficult stage for me. Yeah, I'd say that one. I think it's like you've got a lot to think about there, especially with the problem and how you're progressing through the problem. So I'd say that's the hardest part.
And that skills section that you went through there was really useful because that helped. I mean, literally visualize it for everyone. So that was really useful. And it might have been a while now, but do you remember anything that you did really well in particular that you thought, oh, afterwards, yeah, I'm really glad I did that or approached it in this way? It's a long time ago.
I think it's important that I think I'm going to say completeness of solution.
Okay.
I think I took a while in my interview to get to the answer, but I felt like my answer was very complete.
Interesting. Okay, guys. Yeah, I hope you listen to that. So completeness of solution. A question here from Kirsty. I'm doing a non-tech degree, but I've completed a few beginner courses on data analysis and SQL and Python. Would I be still eligible for those tech placements or internships, Richinda?
Yeah, definitely. So we don't look at subjects that you've come from. We really encourage people that have come from any subject background. It sounds as if you've already got an interest in tech from doing the different sort of boot camps. So I definitely encourage you to apply. In terms of like the coding baseline skills that we're looking for, that initial coding assessment will see if you have got that level. It is really hard to say what that level equates to because it's sort of done automatically in the assessment. So yeah, I would just sort of give that a go and see if it's the right level of what skills you have.
Definitely. And all of those practice resources are there as well. Aisha shared one in the chat, but you also pointed them throughout the application process as well. And just generally, I think everyone listening, continue to build on your skills, whether you're successful or not this year, you want to keep developing those skills. So get onto LeetCode and practice coding and keep building. And if you really love it, then take advantage of that and keep going. And a similar question here for Zaya. So no, you don't need any specific degree for either the tech roles or the strategy roles, which we'll be talking about a little bit more in tomorrow's session. So yeah, super open for you all to apply. A question here from Anna. This might be a tricky one, but do we know when the next Capital One hackathon is?
Oh, I'm not sure because I know we do hackathons with specific universities. We have got a few that we're in the process of planning. I think in sort of October, November time. And then we've had one, it was like the first one that we did sort of internally. So when we had our graduates who were due to join us, we did like an engagement hackathon with them. So that was sort of a chance for them to come in, see a bit more of the office before they joined them. That was like a closed event just for the incoming grads. I'm not sure if we've got any hackathons coming up that are sort of just like open for general ones. So depending on what university you're at, if you are currently, it might be one that we're coming to as well. So probably is worth having a look at any that your university are doing. Samir, I don't know if you've got any more insight to that than me at all.
No, I think it's mostly in the university. So I'd say definitely check out if university has got any coming from us.
Brilliant. And Amma, if you've come a little bit later, so the cutoff for the graduate schemes is 2023. So yeah, if you graduate in 2023, you can apply for the graduate roles. If it's 2022 and later, it's the experienced hire roles that the Capital One has. And yeah, obviously 2024 graduates as well, perfect for the graduate scheme also. A question as well for Samir. What was the one thing that attracted you the most to Capital One, do you think?
So for me, I think it was the social aspect, because in uni, we knew a lot of people who had gone to Cap One or had previously worked from Cap One, and the number one thing I heard there was how nice and social everyone was, and I love the idea of that, and that's what attracted me the most.
Brilliant. And yeah, I think I had that as well when I joined on my graduate scheme, joining with a cohort of other people. And it was really useful because obviously you've got the fun side of it, but also just generally you can ask questions amongst yourselves as well and help each other adapt to the workplace. So I think that's useful. So you found it quite an easy transition then from university into the working world, right? With that cohort around you.
Absolutely. I think the people around you really help because you're all together and you're sort of learning together and getting to that next step as like one, basically.
Yeah. Terrific. A question from Jabil. We've touched on this a little bit. So the baseline coding skills, Rajendra, would you describe that as beginner or intermediate level?
I would say it's more towards an intermediate level. It is hard to obviously say what that level really is. It is quite sort of subjective in terms of what you view them terms as. But yeah, we would need you to have a level. I think it is more towards like the intermediate level from what we're looking at, which just means that once you're in at Capital One on any of the schemes, because you have already got that baseline coding, you can sort of really hit the ground running in a way, and you'll be able to pick up all the different tech and platforms that we do use that we'll be able to train you on as well.
Yeah. And on the product management scheme as well, does that also have the coding test there, or is that slightly different?
No, so the only one that has a coding assessment is the tech one. For our strategy and product management roles, they just have the situational strengths testing.
There you go. So that was a question for Hassan there. So yeah, no technical coding test for the product management or the strategy schemes as well. And as we said, Lorraine, so no special degree for on the tech side. So yeah, whatever you studied, feel free to apply. So if you've done some coding in your spare time, but it's not part of your degree, then that's fantastic. Any advice on practicing technical assessments, either Samir or Rachinda, that you'd add?
I think I'd say like using some of those websites like HackerRank. I found that helped me quite a bit. Just going through more logical problems that you'd see commonly, and I think that helped quite a bit.
Yeah, I would just say the same. Try and practice as much as you can. I know there's loads of resources out there for different coding challenges, so I definitely would do that.
Yeah, practice makes perfect. That's all you can do really is dive into it and just get used to those styles of assessments. And for both of you as well, a question from Aisha: which of the Capital One core values do you think resonates now with you the most?
Good question. I think for me, it's doing the right thing. So one of our values is just to do the right thing. So that goes across for our customers. So we're always making sure that decisions we make are the right thing for the customer. For me, in my job, am I doing the right thing for candidates? So I always try and give as much support as possible. So yeah, that one I kind of always think about quite often. And it goes across a lot of things as well. Like, am I doing the right thing for my colleagues when I give them support? Am I doing the right thing for current grads, like with Samir supporting with this? And yeah, candidates coming through the process as well.
Brilliant. And so yeah, we'll go ahead to me. Yeah, if you have one as well. Yeah, no, please.
I just want to say, so before I joined, there was one statement that I saw often that was "make banking simple," and after I joined, I sort of realized what that actually meant, and that was sort of making sure that it's as easy for everyone to use as possible. So that's making things accessible, making things easy, making sure the text is clear, and so that when you do join Cap One or use Cap One, that it's very clear what's happening at all times, really pushing that simplicity forward.
Yeah, I really like that as well. And I think connects to a point that we made earlier. I think going onto the Capital One website and learn a little bit more about how they talk about credit cards and credit scores and things like that, because they do make it really accessible and helpful for people to learn about, which clearly is like an embodiment of your values. So I would recommend everyone go and check out the website and just learn what you can, because they're really forthcoming with advice there. Question here from Sharad on what language is the code signal assessment in Samir? Did you mention you could choose the language?
You can choose.
Yeah, so it's meant to be language agnostic. I think there's like a massive list on the Code Signal website that has all of the languages that you can use. I would definitely check that out. But I think pretty much most languages are on there. For the pair programming, which is the sort of coding challenge interview, the main languages that we can support with are Python, Java, and JavaScript. Those are the ones that we have sort of all the tech set up for. So yeah, sort of mainly those three for that one.
Perfect. A question here from Anna for you, Richenda. How important would you say leadership and entrepreneurship skills are for the tech programs? Are these skills that will be assessed throughout the application process?
Good question. It's not something that we necessarily look for in the recruitment process. At Capital One, we do appreciate that not everybody wants to be a leader. Some people just like doing their job as they are. So we have kind of like two different streams as such. If you wanted to be a leader, have like a team with you, we can support with that ambition. Or if you just want to be like a subject matter expert, be like the go-to person in what you're doing, but not have anybody reporting into you, we can support with that as well. So yeah, it's not something that we particularly look at. If it's something that you want to talk about in terms of like your career aspirations in your sort of more motivational interviews, you can talk through that. But yeah, it's not something that we assess. Like we wouldn't not put you through to the next stage because you didn't show leadership in your interviews.
Brilliant. And a question here from Chloe. Are the roles hybrid at all? Are there any days that you can work from home, or is it all in the office?
Yeah, so typically it's 2 to 3 days a week in the office. Monday and Friday being our work from home days. The office, both Nottingham and London, are open 5 days a week. So if you actually wanted to come in all 5 days a week, you can do. But yeah, typically Mondays and Fridays are a little bit quieter. And then in terms of like if it's 2 to 3 days, that's dependent on the team that you'll be in. So yeah, once you're in with us, you can see what the team do. But yeah, we do have a hybrid policy.
Perfect.
That's also applicable for like interns as well and placements. So it's not just sort of like full-time, permanent, it is for everybody.
Really inclusive again. So a question here from Ankur on the London positions. Are there going to be any further sort of London graduate roles? And I think there was another question. So whether there be any further roles this year or next year in the London office?
So for this year, not currently any tech graduate ones. We just have the London Tech Internship. It potentially will be next year. Obviously wouldn't be able to say yet until we've confirmed numbers there. But yeah, at the moment, it doesn't look like we'll be opening London Tech graduate roles. We do have the product manager graduate role that will be open in London though. Strategy as well, it's just in Nottingham for the graduate position.
Yeah, and that product management role is also on the job board. So if you go to the link that's pinned to the top, you can check that out. And tomorrow, Aisha, it'd be great if you could share the link to that session for tomorrow. We've got a similar session, but focused on the strategy analyst position. And I think there was a question on whether you can apply to more than one role. Yes, you can. So you can apply to this scheme and then also the product or the strategy schemes as well. Is Capital One accommodating in movement into other departments? So giving you the opportunity to upskill yourself with courses and through exposure to different teams. Now, I think we've mentioned there's a rotational component, isn't there? So you do get to move across the teams there. But yeah, anything to add there at all?
Yeah. So sort of in terms of like the structure of, especially the graduate scheme, you have got the 3 rotations, which typically will be in the core tech teams that we had the slide on, which are web, mobile, data, services, and cloud. We can accommodate for some people sort of out of tech rotations, which sort of outside of those core teams. It's not a guarantee, so it would depend on team capacity at that time and how many people have requested it. But people have sort of done rotations within like cyber before. I think we've got somebody who's currently in the UX team, so sort of like user experience and design on that side. And then Samir, do you want to sort of cover in terms of like other qualifications and your experience with the rotations?
Yeah. So I think we really push for you to sort of get out of your comfort zone and try as many things as possible. So like Richie said, you can definitely like try out of rotation roles if there's space for it. And when you do join another team, you will be assigned another mentor who will be a subject expert in that sort of domain. So you will definitely have all the support you need when switching over to be able to get up to speed with all the new things that you'll come across.
Perfect. Thanks for that. And again, you can see the benefit of joining a scheme like this and having exposure to different teams. When you rotate, you can figure out what's right for you, what are you best suited to, and really learn a lot, I think, as well. Question from Eunice. So connected. So what coding projects do you recommend would best suit the tech roles, Samir?
Oh, coding projects. Interesting. So I wouldn't say there's like an outright coding project that you should aim for. I genuinely think it's all about what you're interested in. It's all about what you find interesting. Like if we're talking about me specifically, at the time I did my interview and when I was sort of doing graduate sort of stuff, I went really deep into biomedical computer science. So how I can use computer science with biomedicine and things like that. And I found that really interesting, and that's what I spoke about. But I think if you go for what really interests you most, that is definitely the best thing for you.
Definitely, that's what my answer would have been as well. So we want to see what you enjoy and what you're really passionate about. We wouldn't want you to sort of work on projects just because you think that's what we're looking for. So yeah, definitely just whatever you're interested in, that's what we want to see.
Perfect. And thanks again, guys, for sticking with us all the way right through this session and giving some amazing questions. We're going to get through the last few questions here. And yeah, don't forget to obviously go and apply to the Capital One roles that we've been discussing. You can mention diverse, I think, as well throughout the application process as a place where you saw the role, and also reach out to us if you've got any extra questions. If we cannot help you at all, then let us know. Yes, the session is going to be recorded, so don't worry about that. Question here as well. So how is the career progression in Capital One?
Limitless. So our current UK CEO was a grad with us, so there really isn't any blocker. It's as much as sort of you want to take it, really. We'll support in that journey. So we'll do career conversations with you. So yeah, it's really up to you where you want to go with it. After the sort of the 2-year program, which is like the structured graduate program, we'll have those conversations to see if you did want to take more of like a leadership position, or if you wanted to be more of like a subject matter expert within the sort of tech team and domain that you've chosen to sort of stay within after the rotations. So yeah, there will be loads of support with making sure that you do keep developing at the rate that you want to as well. One thing at Capital One that I found really useful since joining is there is a really structured like performance management program. So you get a end of year check-in with your manager where you can sort of look at goals, and then you have a mid-year check-in as well where you can sort of look at how you're progressing with those goals. So you can really stay accountable for it, and your manager can support where needed as well.
Fantastic. A question here from, I think we covered this one, Joshua. So in terms of preparation for those online assessments, you're going to get lots from Capital One signposted to you as you go through the process. Samir also mentioned HackerRank as well, so check that one out. And yeah, we're going to be sending more advice via our newsletter, so we'll share some more of these links as well if you haven't caught them. Question here from Anna for Samir: was obtaining the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner certificate part of your day-to-day work, or did you complete that in your spare time?
Yeah, so as part of being a tech graduate, you have the opportunity to upskill and get into things like AWS certification as well. So I was able to do my AWS base cert. And for in terms of time, Capital One has a dedicated time slot called 10% time. So every week you can use 10% of your time to do whatever you want. It can be anything you want. And this is a protected time, so this is time just for you. And I often use that to study for my AWS exam.
Awesome. So you block that out in your calendar to make sure you do that? Yeah?
Yeah, we take it, at least in team, we take that really seriously to make sure everyone has the opportunity to do what they want as well.
Wow. Okay, I'm stealing that because I like that a lot. So yeah, that's brilliant because that's a really good way to just make sure you continue learning and maybe explore other things like that certificate that might even help you with your job as well. So really cool. Um, Eunice, what frameworks do you guys use, and what would you recommend the most experience for the role for the tech roles? So, what frameworks is that a very technical term, Samir, that you're familiar with?
I,
Frameworks
I
more so than
I guess
me.
I was thinking more what kind of maybe like what kind of tech stacks, and this is very dependent on what
Okay,
team you get into. So for our team, I guess we're a full stack team, so we look at front end from React to TypeScript to the back end, where we use Java and Spring. And every team differs. So if you go into mobile team, you start using Kotlin and Swift, and you'll also take heavy advantage of the cloud in whatever team you join. So it's very team dependent.
brilliant. And a question here from Oluwasin that we covered off earlier. So, yes, visa sponsorship can be covered. So, you need to have the right to work in the UK. So, that might be the graduate route visa. But yeah, if you're from overseas, as Samir is as well, then there's still the opportunity to apply and get one of these roles. Do you have any recommendations for specific online certificates for tech roles? So you mentioned the AWS role certificate that you have, Samir. Is there any others that you'd recommend?
Um, Not at the top of so at Cap One, you also do get the opportunity to do like cyber courses as well, so certifications for things like that, and that's very much in team as well as AWS certs. So that kind of stuff is offered to you at Cap One. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I think.
Perfect. No, that's really good. So again, if you want to go away and add to your CV even more, then there's lots of free courses you can do out there that can help you stand out from the crowd. So last question from the community, and I'll share it with both the guests. And I think it's kind of a nice maybe summary as well. So from Tualiwani. And overall, so we've kind of seen that obviously graduate programs and placements can be quite competitive. What would be one piece of advice that you would want to leave everyone with on how to potentially stand out in the application process, Rashinda and Simon?
Definitely sort of do your practice. So yeah, practice those assessments, practice with mock interviews, and then research. So research Capital One. We do have questions on the video interviews about why Capital One, sort of what your motivations for applying are. But we really want to see sort of why it resonates and connects with you. So yeah, I'd say that's sort of the thing that really sort of stands out for me is people's sort of motivation for Capital One, people who sort of get really excited about the prospect of working to Capital One as well. Hopefully we've heard all the really great things, and there is loads of more great things as well that we probably didn't have time for today. So yeah, we want to see that energy. We want to see you be yourself as well. We want to hire people who feel like they can be themselves at Capital One, however they choose to express themselves. So yeah, really just bring yourself and show off during the interview process.
Perfect. Anything to add to that, Samir?
Yeah, no, I definitely go off of what Richie said. It's the same with me. I'd say the biggest part was just being yourself. I found that just sort of expressing what I like to do the most and things I was interested in was the best way I could show like everything about me. And I'd say just definitely please be yourself.
Yeah, really lean into that, because when you are being yourself truly throughout the application process, you're going to feel more comfortable, you're going to come off as more passionate, and you're going to perform better as well. So you've heard it directly from Samir, who's got one of the roles. So hopefully you've really taken that on board, and you can go away and apply that now. Just a reminder again, guys, we've got the link to the roles at the top there pinned into the chat. So do go away and apply now, and best of luck with your applications. If you are also interested in strategy as well, we've got the session tomorrow at the same time as well with a strategy analyst as well. We've also are doing some smaller sessions to help with general careers advice and application support and interviews and so on, interview prep in our community hub. So I think Aisha, if you could just drop the link there as well, you can fill out that form to join that. And as always, just let us know if you've got any questions at all. Just before we close out, guys, drop a comment in the chat just to say thank you for our guests. Without them taking their time to join these sessions, we wouldn't be able to put them on, and it really does make all the difference in the world. So drop in your thank yous, let them know what you thought of the session. That would be terrific. And I will just show one last poll as well. Let us know on a scale of 1 to 10 how you found the session, how you rated the session. And as always, we're always keen to get more feedback. So if you want to let us know what you thought of the session, if there's anything else you'd like us to do differently in the future, let us know and we can take that on board. Lots of 10s and 9s there. Fantastic. That's what we like to see. So yeah, hopefully see you tomorrow, and best of luck with the applications. Rashinda and Samir, thanks again. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing some advice and wisdom. And I think lots of people are excited about Capital One right now.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for having us. And yeah, good luck for any applications you guys put in.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, let's leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. See you tomorrow and best of luck. All right.
Amazing.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.